Sapientia operibus vindicata. Welcome back to the Fire of Liberty podcast at Naples Classical Academy. As always, I remind you that we're a Hillsdale member school. We're sending about 30 people up to Hillsdale this summer to get what would be the best training the country offers for classical liberal arts schools. We're also taking applications for the 24-25 school year. So if you haven't quite figured out where you want to send your student for next year, this is probably going to be your best bet. So I would encourage you to look into that. Please reach out to the school if you have any questions. Today, we have a very special guest. I'm excited to introduce Mrs. D'Agostino. Sherry is currently the literacy coach here at Naples Classical Academy. She'll be moving into a new role next year, but she'll continue to do that as well. And so she's sort of like our resident master of literacy. And what's really great about that is she works for us. She's so great at the Hillsdale Literacy Program that they noticed it when they were coming here to visit us and do their observations and asked her to be a part of their team. And so she's actually working here for us full time, but also working as a part of Hillsdale's training team for the literacy program. So welcome to the Fire of Liberty.
Why, thank you. It's an honor.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good. Okay, I just want to start really simply by talking a little bit about how you even got into teaching in the first place. Like, where did that whole thing come from with you? Is it something you woke up one day and you said, oh, I could try that? Or maybe you were born that way, or I don't know. What was it?
Well, it was all born out of the fact that I did not want to leave my kindergartner at school on the first day. That was when education sort of became a part of my life. I didn't know it at the moment, but years and years later, here I am.
Yeah.
So I dropped my daughter off at kindergarten and had a hard time leaving. So I kind of hung out. And next thing you know, I was volunteering for the school, which turned into substitute teaching, which turned into full-time teaching, which turned into where I'm at now.
Wow, that's awesome. That's funny. I bet that's a common experience. I mean, just among parents when they drop their 5-year-olds off. It's that first time. It's probably very hard. How did you find NCA, and how did you end up at Naples Classical Academy?
So I had been working at a classical school prior to Naples Classical, and I always appreciated the Hillsdale College being a part of the formation of schools. So when I learned that Naples Classical Academy was going to be a Hillsdale member school, I definitely wanted to come on board.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate all of the years, actually, at this point. I think this is my 10th or 11th year in classical education. And so most of those years have been with Hillsdale, training with them and going to those summer camps of training up there. So it's been a wonderful experience.
Those are like great pilgrimages.
They are.
I know.
And they feed you well while you're there.
They do. They feed you well.
Yes, there's a joke amongst the teachers that are going again this year that we can't wait for the cookies. They have some really good cookies at their little buffet. So, but it's great. It's a great opportunity to not only learn about your craft, but it's also a good time to just enjoy fellowship, and meet other people that are in the network, and then see them year after year. Yeah. So it's a great way to network. Yeah,
no, it's some of the greatest conversations I've had when I've been up there, and just the people that you meet who are at all these other schools around the country, and then every time I go, there's always a number of things where I learn and I feel like I grow. I don't think I've said this to a number of people. I don't think I've grown as much in the art of teaching or in leadership as I have in the 2.5 years that I've been working with Hillsdale and receiving that training from them. So, it's been I always think of it as a pilgrimage.
It is.
Whenever I go up there, it's all these like-minded people, and we're talking about all my favorite things. And Dr. O'Toole always talks about Aristotle, and we all know that how I feel about him. And so it's always just a great.
It's always something new to learn. And it's very surreal to me that I'm actually going to be teaching a session on literacy while I'm there.
That's amazing.
At the end of the,
super proud of you.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. I've been working on my presentation because I want to make sure that whoever comes to it, and it's full already.
Yeah.
I just found out yesterday.
Wow, cool. That's great.
Yeah, I know. Miss Rudder sent me a text message and said, "Your session is full."
Oh,
already.
Way to go.
So that's kind of intimidating, and
that's amazing.
I've really got to deliver this time. Huh?
Oh, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited.
It's going to be fun.
It's great.
So you've been here since I got here. Mm-hmm. When I got here, when I first came, you were just taking over the literacy coaching.
I was.
I think you started out teaching fourth grade.
Right.
Right.
Grade.
Is that what you did prior to coaching? You were teaching kind of lower school, or?
Yes. So I did several years teaching fourth grade, and during the time that I substitute taught, I taught everything.
Yeah.
From pre-K through fifth grade, sixth grade.
Yeah.
So I've gotten to see all gamuts of the K through 6. What you get in kindergarten versus what you get in third grade is certainly a departure. So from each other, but all good.
When I became the head of school and you were the literacy coach, and I would listen to you, I remember thinking to myself, "Wow, holy cow, wow." And so how did you make that transition out of the classroom in the lower school where you're I always think that lower school teachers are model liberal artists because they have to teach all of the disciplines. They have to love them all and know them all and be able to move in and out of them. And I think when you're teaching in lower school, it helps you to see how all these disciplines are connected to each other and the necessity of each one for the other and that sort of thing. But what made you decide, I'm going to come out of the classroom and I'm just going to specialize in this one thing and this is what I want to do?
Well, I first saw the need for it.
Yeah.
Because the literacy component of the elementary is vitally important. Without literacy skills, we can't access anything else as students. So I would say that, and just experience. I just knew the literacy. I mean, I didn't realize it many years ago going to Hillsdale back in maybe 2013, 14, that the literacy training I received was from the authors of the books themselves.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize the significance of that until much later. Yeah. So it was just something that I found very fascinating. And I remember my early years of just being thrown in a substitute teaching position in kindergarten, wondering, how am I going to teach these young people to read?
Yeah.
Do I just kind of let them guess it? Do I let them sound it out? Do they know how to sound it out? There were so many questions. So it's not an easy task.
Yeah.
But it's something that all teachers can learn how to teach.
Yeah. Well, you said something that was interesting to me, how essential it is, the literacy, because we can't do anything else. Do you think it's, in your opinion, do you think it's particularly, especially in the time that we're in right now in education and where things are at, do you think it's particularly important today that a school that is ordered to academic excellence takes on the literacy program in the way that, in a similar way that we have?
I would say yes. And the proof is in when I walk into a classroom and I glance down and I see a kindergartner who has written a complete sentence and everything in it is spelled properly.
Yeah.
And they capitalize the first letter of the sentence of the word. Yeah. And they put a punctuation mark at the end of it. Yeah. And every word in between is all perfectly, not only perfectly, spelled correctly, but the beauty in their handwriting as well. So it's not just learning how to read.
Yeah, absolutely.
Through our program here, it's way beyond that.
Yeah.
They learn proper letter formation for manuscript starting in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Even down to how they hold their pencil is taught explicitly. So yes, it is important.
Great. But I want to talk about one thing. I taught second grade for 2 years, and I taught middle school, as you know, for a little while. And I would always have them write for their homework in middle school, even if it were just short answers, What I discovered right away was that they couldn't write complete sentences, a lot of them. And so my homework really became more about writing a sentence. Mm-hmm. And so at the top of my homework, I actually listed, here are the parts of a sentence.
Mm.
And
yes.
And these 10 questions will be graded on whether or not your answers to these questions are, whether they're accurate or not isn't the most important thing to me right now. It really is that you can write a sentence accurately. And it's amazing to me even how listing it, telling them that that's what they're going to be scored on, how many students would not capitalize. I mean, it's written right at the top. Mm-hmm. Every sentence starts with a capital letter, right? How many students would not capitalize the first word, would not put punctuation in the sentence at the end, even at the end, right? Mm-hmm. The most
important part. Otherwise, you just keep reading.
I understand
pausing.
If you're not sure where to put the comma, that's all fine. That makes sense. But every sentence ends with some punctuation. So, and so I think I recognized at that point, I had taught literacy for a couple of years, a different program, and I didn't maybe understand how important it was until I went and I taught middle school. Then I recognized, wow, I've got 7th and 8th grade students who really honestly are struggling to write complete sentences. And a lot of those students were students who are coming from someplace else, right? They're coming from outside of our system, and now they've been thrown into middle school, and we expect them to be able to write. So that part of it really interested me. You said something else, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about more in detail about our literacy program. Can you talk a little bit about basically where it's from, and then the essential, where we got it, and then what's the fundamentally, what's the end? What's the purpose of it? And then we'll talk more about the details after we do that.
So I think the first thing I wanted to demystify is that it's not just a phonics program.
Yeah.
It is whole language. Mm-hmm. So first of all, in words, right, mm-hmm. They're represented by letters. Well, the problem with our English language is that we have a 26-letter alphabetic code. We have more sounds than we have alphabetic letters. Mm-hmm. So then develop spelling patterns on top of that. Mm-hmm. So to further complicate things, our English language it's just a melting pot of different languages. You've got the French, you've got the Germanic language. It's just a melting pot. Mm-hmm. So how do you make sense of that when you're trying to teach a student how to spell?
Yeah.
And or how to read it.
Yeah. So
that's where Literacy Essentials comes in, with the idea that we bring order to it. Mm. So it seems impossible, right? Do we have to learn how to spell just using individual letters? Well, you could. And I think a lot of other schools have likely just sent home a list and said, here, memorize how to spell these words.
Yeah.
And maybe for simple words like cat, dog, those are all what we would call basic code words.
Sure.
Which, by the way, my kindergartners know what a basic code word is. They can define it for you. So a basic code word is essentially any word that uses only the alphabetic letters, and it says its first sound.
Yeah.
So they know that.
Yeah.
So the word me would not be a basic code word, because in the word me, the E is saying its second sound. It's saying its long sound. Its first sound is eh. So again, it seems daunting to think about, but there is order in it.
Yeah.
In using our 72 spelling patterns that we use. and the 42 sounds that those phonemes sound like, and the combination of our alphabetic letters to make those 72 spelling patterns. So it's...
This makes me think about a couple of things. Do you think that, because there is a difference between the two codes, right? The alphabet, as most students learn it, and what we're doing, right? So the alphabet, here are all these letters, these visible signs, and here's what we call these things. And then the phonemic code that we have with them. Talk a little bit about what you think the difference between those two things is.
Okay. So interestingly enough, when our kids come into kindergarten, it's okay if they don't know their little alphabet song. A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
As cute as it is.
It's very cute.
It's very precious.
And you know what? When they need to alphabetize something, which I can't imagine what that would be, but if they needed to alphabetize something, that's very handy.
Yes. Great.
However, the letter C in a word is not going to say C.
Yeah.
That's its letter name. So the alphabetic code in the little alphabet song is giving the letter name. And in some cases, like the E, it's going to say E.
Does it only say E?
No. Oh. It says and E, the letter E. Mm-hmm. But then if we want to talk about the code, there's multiple.
Does B ever say B in a word?
B. No, not even in the word B.
Oh.
It says B and E, which is phoneme E, which is a different, So the single letter E can say E. And then there's a rule with that too. Mm-hmm. So that's the consistent vowel rule.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to throw it off.
So,
great.
Yeah.
Okay, so the difference between the two then.
All right, so you have the alphabetic code, which is basically the letters, and we can call those graphemes because they are the picture that represents that particular letter.
Yeah.
And then we have phonemes, which are sounds that are made in words. So, for example, we have the word dog, right? We have 3 sounds to that word. The phonemes are D, A, G. The graphemes you have there are alphabetic letter D, alphabetic letter O, and alphabetic letter G. But notice when I said G, dog, doesn't say G when I say dog, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got your phonemes, which are your sounds, and you've got your alphabetic code that makes up. Sometimes it represents a single letter, but oftentimes it's going to be a grapheme, which is a spelling pattern. So that's where you get into these mixture of letters. So there's no one-to-one correspondence. Yeah. We can't just rely on single letter A to always be spelled as single letter A. Mm-hmm. We have the AY, we have AI, we have EIGH.
Yeah.
Which there's no A in it.
Yeah, that's right.
But it says A.
Yeah.
So it's
the
very
A of sleigh.
Yeah, there you go. So it seems very difficult or even complex.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it is our students, we just step into the pool and we just start diving into it all. Starting with kindergarten. So even in kindergarten, they learn many multi-letter phonograms before they go on to first grade. So it's a sequential.
Yeah.
You know, they start with basic code.
Yeah.
And then they move into more of the multi-letter phonograms.
Yeah. So you talked about dropping your 5-year-old off at school and how daunting that was. And now that led you to eventually to teaching. And now here you are, people are dropping their 5-year-olds off. And what do we expect from these students in kindergarten with this literacy program?
So by the end of the year, they are definitely reading. They're definitely they can analyze words in kindergarten if you really want to break it down that way.
Yeah.
They take the word day, for example, which is a 3 grapheme word, but it has a multi-letter phonogram, and they learn it as a 2-letter A, which is the graphemes A and Y together to make the phonemic pattern, right? It sounds like A. So then it becomes a spelling pattern of A and Y. Mm-hmm. So they learn even as simple as that day They don't learn it as D-A-Y.
Yeah.
They learn it as D and A, 2-letter A, that we do use at the end of English words.
And talk about how the program also incorporates writing into...
It's a very interesting question.
Because are they going to be writing in kindergarten, or how?
Absolutely.
This is why.
They are actually writing before they learn to read it. So the orthography comes first, and the words that are selected. So once they learn all of the proper formation of the manuscript letters and the sounds of the first 26. So even when they learn the letter formation of the letter A, which ironically is not the first one that they learn, they actually learn the letter C first because it's simpler to teach as far as its formation. So, but once they get to the letter A, they learn that it has 3 sounds: a, ah. So this is all happening simultaneously in the classroom. The teacher's teaching them specifically, explicitly, how to form that letter properly. They know that it starts at 2 on the clock, just below the dotted line. And this is all instructional language that they learn. And then they learn how to make, so everyone's making it's like a rowing team. Everybody's making their letters the same. And in the same manner. So after that, so while they're learning the proper manuscript of writing them, they're learning the sounds that they make. So we talked about G earlier. So they learn G as G, J. It has 2 sounds. And then later they'll learn that there's a rule. When does it say J and not G? And that's a whole other thing that we won't go into at the moment. But there's a rule that goes with it. So they do learn how to write first. So the orthography or the spelling comes first. And then they're mastering that. And then they read them. So they can already write the word. And then now they go back and read it. Or they can start to read it in a book. They've already written the word many times before they actually see it in black and white print in a book. They've made all of those connections with those words.
Interesting.
So the words that kindergarten learns are directly related to the words that are in their phonics readers. So they learn to write them first. And then they get a book, open it up. Hey, I've written these words before. I know how to read them.
Great. And is there some, do you think there's some, can you maybe talk a little bit about that, the ordering of those things and why it's important, why we think it's important to order them in that way?
Yes. Okay. So with our literacy program, everything is multisensory. So they are first experiencing the word for the first time in a pattern of see it, say it, hear it, write it. So they have already seen what the phonograms look like by them learning how to write them in manuscript. They know how to say the sounds because that's been taught in conjunction with. So now they're going to write it. So now they've learned that. And so in the classroom, when they're learning how to do these things, they are literally talking to their pencils. It sounds silly, but it's true. But so the science says it, right? The neurologists say that when you're engaging your brain in multiple forms at the same time, it hardwires that information to your brain. So when students are seeing it, saying it, hearing it, writing it simultaneously by talking to their pencil and they're writing the formation of the letter D or A or whatever the grapheme is, that they are wiring that into their brains. Oh, this letter looks like this and it sounds like this because they're helping to reinforce that by saying it as they write it. So, and then it's a question and answer flow. It's an encode, recode, decode. So the encode is what does it sound like? So they first break it out by sound. So phonemic awareness is very important in kindergarten. So oftentimes parents will ask, well, what can I do at home? And I usually have a couple of answers to that, especially for early elementary. Number one is phonemic awareness. Break down a word by sound because that's what we're doing here. And they love it. They think it's a game. right? I'll say, okay, if I give you some sounds, can you come up with the word?
Yeah.
So I could do something. I could just walk into a classroom at any moment and say, okay, listen, what are the sounds? And I'll just, what's the word? And I'll just give them the sounds. Like I'll go, f, l, a, g. And then they're building it in their brains, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll come back, flag. That's right. Do they maybe know how to spell it? Most of them will by that point.
Yeah.
So phonemic awareness is important because we are learning to spell by sound. So we're breaking it down, and then the students are encoding it. So once they've written the sounds, they go back and look at their paper, and then they're telling the teacher. So the teacher never writes the word on the board.
Sure.
The students write it first.
Yeah.
And they are being directed by their teacher as to what phoneme they need to write, phonogram that they need to write.
Yeah.
So they write it first. Students write it first. And then when they're finished, they look back at their word and she'll say, what's the first phonogram that you wrote? And they will give her the phonograms. So then she writes it back. That's the recode.
Yeah.
And then the decode is basically blending it together through the sounds to make the word. So they do all of that before we hand them a book.
A book. That's right. That's great. Great. And so that leads them to have all of these, to know these words, writing them over and over again, which, as you were saying, there's some scientific study, I think, now that basically says what happens is that helps us to trap that thing in our mind so that we know it better. So that when they actually open a book, those words, they've already seen those words. And as soon as they see them, it's like, oh, I know that word.
But we're not memorizing them, though.
Right. But we're not memorizing them. Right.
We're segmenting it by sound.
Yeah.
Identifying the grapheme that goes with it and writing it, which for us is called a phonogram because it's a spelling pattern. And then we go back and read it.
That's awesome.
And that's before we ever get to any actual spelling rules, which we do spelling rules even in kindergarten. Yeah. They learn the vowel rule, consistent vowel rule.
What are the spelling rules they learn in kindergarten?
So they will learn the consistent vowel rule, which is consistent vowels, A, E, O, U, usually say A, E, O, U, or U at the end of a syllable.
How do you get a kindergartner to know a rule like that and understand how it works?
Well, they're going to encounter it over and over in different words. So, for example, a consistent vowel rule word would be like me. Yeah. Because it's saying E at the end of the word. Yeah. Go. There's another one, it's saying O at the end of the syllable. Yeah. So they will see the same rule being applied over and over with just different various words. And so when the teacher's teaching the word, the rule is basically, it takes time for them to learn the rule, but before you know it, they're saying it before I even get a chance to. Yeah. These children are sponges. It's incredible to me what they're able to learn. I mean, I have some students here in the building that I often joke about them, taking my job one day. They're so good at it. They're so good at it. It's so impressive to see them know the rules. And what really gets sort of fun for me is when the kids get in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, then they begin to try to analyze the words on their own. Like, why is this? And is this a consistent vowel rule? Is this why this word is syllabicated here? And so it's word analysis. Yeah. That's
awesome.
It is. I love it.
Can you talk a little bit about why it's important, why we teach whole group and why that's an important part of teaching literacy?
Well, with our literacy that we use, it can be whole group because it really does reach everyone. Because it's multisensory, everyone is getting sort of, I think the word that we typically use is remediated or enriched. Well, it's for everyone. Everyone's learning on through the same multisensory practice. Yeah. And it's consistent practice that's happening every day. Then they get punctuated practices throughout the day. So even though to say that we do 160 minutes of literacy in kindergarten every day seems like, wow, that's a lot. Yeah. But it's punctuated. Yeah. It's taught, and then we move on to something else. and then we revisit it. So it's done throughout the day in short spurts so that students with, until they can have that academic stamina to do. So kindergarten, for example, they'll be more like 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then as you get a little older through the grades, maybe we can do a little longer sessions. But yeah. And let's not forget the grammar components too. So there's a lot of components.
You should talk about the grammar components.
So the reason why there's 160 minutes of literacy built into all of the grades.
Great. Yeah. Let's stretch it all out so they understand why we do all of this during the day with them.
It's not just spelling and it's not just reading, actually. We get into the grammar side. Mm-hmm. So even kindergartners learn the types of sentences. For kindergarten, it's introduced, but we're not looking for mastery. We're just having them ready for what they're going to encounter in first grade. So even in kindergarten, they learn the types of sentences. They learn what a noun is. They learn what a verb is. They learn the word pronoun. And they do that. It's not that they just learn what it is as they're learning their words. So if their word for the day, one of their spelling words was the word go, they learn that that's a verb. And then they learn why it's a verb. It's an action verb because it's something that we can do. So it's not just learning how to spell the word, learning how to decode the word and moving on. It's how is that word functioning in our English language, either in writing or in speaking. So they learn that early in kindergarten, and then first grade we move in and they get their literacy essentials graphic organizers, which really, I love this book because it covers everything. Mm-hmm. They can graphically organize and put their words that they're learning into spelling patterns and rules and parts of speech. Yeah. They learn synonyms and antonyms and regular verbs and irregular verbs. And
wait, what grade?
All types of, first grade. First grade gets this book, and they use it to record their words. So they learn all kinds of wonderful things, even in first grade. And then they are reinforced in second grade through the second grade list of words that are chosen. They get a little more syllables in second grade, a little more rules. We begin to see some of those Latin side of words happening. Latin. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we like Latin here.
So they learn very quickly what a base word is, what suffixes are, prefixes. So all of that happens.
Yeah.
So in first grade.
So all of this is going to sound to people who are listening to it very foreign, right? When I talk to parents, when we do the Thursday tours, when we talk about it a little bit, I'm not you, but I do my best Sherry D'Agostino impersonation on the Thursday tours. And then I always take them into Mrs. Rudder's room and let them get a full taste of what is really happening. Mm-hmm. And without fail, when they come out of the room and after we've talked about it a little bit, they're just sort of like deer in headlights, right? We've never seen anything like this. I think they recognize the goodness in it.
The value.
Yeah, and they can see all the students in the room who are totally engaged. They know these rules.
By third grade, yes, they do.
By third grade, they have these rules down to a science, all of it.
Absolutely.
And so they can see all of that. And but still, I just wonder, for people who are listening, are there some things out there that they could look at or listen to, or that would help them to understand some of it a little bit better?
Well, I think to understand the importance of it, I absolutely love the podcast series Sold a Story, where it talks about the history of phonics and reading programs in America that goes back to before I was a student. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an interesting thing to listen to. Yeah. To kind of understand why explicit phonics instruction is so important. We do that. We do explicit phonics instruction, but we're just going beyond that. Yeah. Because we know that our students are perfectly capable. Yeah. Actually, all students are perfectly capable of learning the grammar, learning the etymology of a word, learning how the words are segmented into syllables. All of these things are perfectly in the realm of what a student can learn. So, so I would say I love that sold a story. As far as what parents could do for their kids, I would say read to them.
Yeah.
Knowledge acquisition can happen even for a very tiny person, right? I know that you often read to your children
every night,
and I know the quality stuff that you're reading to them, and I have no doubt that they have a vast vocabulary already.
They do.
Do they know how to spell it yet? Because I know your little one is like 2 or 3 or somewhere in there.
They're 3 and 5. Yeah.
But I bet from the vocabulary that you've read through what you've read, he recognizes the words and likely knows what it means.
Oh yeah.
Maybe spelling isn't there yet, but so that's the beauty of what we do here is they're learning knowledge and vocab through the other disciplines. So history, science, literature. We can acquire knowledge. Anyone can acquire knowledge. I mean, even the middle school students who do have difficulty reading, they can acquire knowledge in history by listening to someone lecture in history. It's all possible. So knowledge acquisition, I think, is very important. And vocabulary acquisition at an early age is very important.
Yeah.
And I think that is accomplished through just reading to your children.
Yeah. That's great.
Just read to them.
That's great. I agree. We do read to them a lot at home. That's primarily their form of entertainment at our house is reading. So, we've seen with the boys, especially, they're very articulate and they're very good communicators, and they have picked up words, that we just from us reading good books to them that we would never have. My 5-year-old, he just turned 5 in April. He's actually sort of started when we read at night. His little brother still likes to read books about construction sites and all that other stuff. So I have to always kind of try to pull him away from it. But Dominic, his older brother, is 5 now, and he's started asking, Dad, do I have to listen to the construction book? Oh. I'm kind of past all that. And he's actually started asking us to read, chapter books to him, because it's just sort of where he's at now. And so he will sit and listen to us read a book with no pictures, with lots of words, for probably 10 or 15 minutes before he's like, okay, I'm ready to go wrestle with somebody now. And
so now he can catch up later with the actual orthography of those words, learning how to spell those words, or even knowing where those words come from. Yeah. Which sounds like he might be that type of inquisitive student who might want to know where a word comes from.
Yeah, he is like that. He's very much like that.
Well, that's the beauty of this program is that we eventually, that's where it goes in the upper grades. I mean, 3rd grade literacy does get into the Greek and Latin side of words. Like one of their spelling words, for example, is the word pneumonia. I'm trying to think of another one that they have. So they have a lot of...
In 3rd grade?
In 3rd grade. Oh, Yeah. So, and then 4th and 5th grade also, they get into their Greek and Latin by using this English from the roots up. They start to learn Greek and Latin root. So that sort of gets into the morphology of words, where the words come from. So
can you? I don't think this is shifting gears too much, because it's the liberal arts. So
it's hard not to shift gears though when you're talking about literacy.
Right. So everything
vast.
is, and it's all connected to each other.
It is.
You mentioned it earlier, the importance of being able to access texts and being able to read so that you can learn the other things. And I just wondered if you would just talk a little bit about how our because what we do in the liberal arts, right, the Great Books program. Can you just talk a little bit about how the importance of inculcating in the students this profound sense of literacy, how it translates into success in the middle school and in the high school, based on kind of just on what we do specifically.
Okay. So this question makes me think of a story. I was interviewed for the newspaper earlier this school year, and Mr. Quinn Buckley, one of our graduates,
Spider-Man, yes,
came to interview me, and he was sort of trying to ask me to explain literacy. Not that, well, I don't think your column's long enough, but so I started trying to give him what I've done here, the graphemes and spelling patterns story. And I could see he's like, okay. I tell you what, I said, give me a word. I said, think of a word, any word, maybe a word that you're encountering right now in class. And he's like, well, can it be from, I said, wherever. So he came up with the word echinoderm.
Oh.
Echinoderm. So, which is some sort of a spiny, like, sea creature. I think that's what it means, like a starfish or something. Echinoderm.
So it must have been in marine biology or something.
Perhaps. It must have been in his marine biology class that he came up with the word echinoderm.
Okay.
So I said, okay. I said, follow me. So we marched down to a second grade classroom, and they were about to go to lunch, but I took a moment. And I wrote echinoderm on the board for them, and I marked it. I syllabicated it. I marked it for sounds. I marked it for multi-letter phonograms, all the above. And stepped back, pointed at it, and said, students, can you read this word for me? And so they were able to, because it was syllabicated. It was marked, because they know what the markings mean. And they just, echinoderm.
Wow.
Mr. Buckley thought I had done some sort of magic trick. It literally looked like a magic trick. He goes, wow, how did they do that? And I said, well, and that was second grade, and that was early in the school year.
Yeah.
I said, they just know.
Yeah.
They understand. So the fun part in that word echinoderm, you have two multi-letter phonograms in there.
Yeah.
One of them is the two graphemes C and H together, which make three sounds. It'll say ch, like in the word child. Yeah. It'll say k in the word school, right? And then the sh, like in French words like chef or chauffeur. So I marked it with the second sound. They knew that it was the k sound. Yeah. So when they went to go read echinoderm, they knew that the ch said k. They knew that the I was saying I because I underlined it. Again, the consistent vowel rule. Yeah. Actually, I is a less consistent vowel. That's a whole nother rule, but they know it, right? So less consistent vowels, I and Y, usually say E or I at the end of a syllable, but may say I. But in this one, it was echinoderm. So when I underlined the I, they saw it at the end of a syllable. They knew that it was saying I. And then the other multi-letter phonogram of that word was the ER, which is the pattern as in the of her. That's how the students learn it. Yeah. So when I went through and syllabicated the word, so I segmented it by sound and then, or by syllable, and then we worked it out by sound and reading it. And they just know how to read from the markings. That's great. So, and again, markings start in kindergarten. Starts off very, it's all very scaffold. It's not, we don't just throw words like echinoderm at kindergartners. They are learning the rules and the sounds through various words on appropriate grade level before we get to echinoderm.
So this all sounds very terrifying.
It's all very orderly, though.
And I have a kindergartner, and I'm about to bring him in. I might be scared. At any level, I mean, not any level, but say parents bring a student into the school somewhere K-5, and they've never had this experience before. How in the world are we going to catch them up? How are we going to get them?
Well, that's a good question. So I was in a second.
Is it possible?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. I was in a second grade classroom at the beginning of this year teaching literacy, and there was a particular student in there who was brand new, never been to our school before. And I just remember the first few days we always start with a review. So every grade level starts with this review, starting with the manuscript formation of letters, all the way through the multi-letter phonograms and rules. And it's all very beautifully laid out and purposeful in how these lessons go. So there is a review that happens. And a lot of students who have a propensity for learning will pick up a lot of it during that time.
Yeah.
But so second grade at the beginning of this year, I had this student who was new to the school, and he also watched me teach literacy essentials as if I was doing a magic trick. He was so fascinated by the literacy.
Yeah.
And anytime I would look down to make eye contact with him, he was always just glaring up at me, so excited.
Yeah.
And because it's multisensory, so we're seeing it, saying it, hearing it, writing it, he's, chanting the stuff with us, the sounds, the rules as he learned them. And so if a student immerses themselves in it right away, most students, I believe, will pick it up rather quickly. It's not a silver bullet. It's not a magic wand.
Of course, yeah. Can you elaborate on because if they don't pick it up in in that review part of it, are they going to feel sort of isolated and alone, sitting in this classroom, trying to learn this thing that, they've never seen before? Or how does it look in the classroom so that it might be easy for them to blend in and catch up on that a little bit?
So when you're looking at a whole group classroom, you have to think of these things. So out of our 160-minute time frame that literacy is happening during the day, there is at least 2 blocks that I can think of where students are. So one of them is paired partner practice for spelling. So what the teacher would do is recognize that the student is new and needs help in learning it, pair them with my master student in the room that can help them along. I mean, because let's be honest, one teacher just can't do everything all day long.
Right.
So when they do their partner practice, which is, again, a very structured practice time where they have their either their literacy essentials books out or whatever they're practicing, and they partner practice. So one student pretends that they're the teacher while the other student is the student. And then if they're of equal level, they'll change roles. But a student who's paired with a student who might need help, that student will stay the teacher the whole time and help that student along. While that's happening, for students who may really be identified as really needing some help, the teacher's pulling a small group to the back. So maybe 5 or 6 students she's got in the back of the room, students who may be struggling but could get some help from a peer. They're paired with their peers based on a higher student with a struggling student. And so that kind of gives that student that edge. And then there is the same situation with partnered reading, where they're paired on likability for reading. And then students who are struggling would be doing a small group with the teacher. So there are opportunities built in during the day where there is practice time where students will have a more small group, just to practice those things a little more.
Yeah, that's. Can you talk a little bit about how whole group teaching itself may actually even be kind of helpful in that regard too, just to get them caught up?
Absolutely. So that second grade class that I had at the beginning of the year, well, anybody who's ever seen me teach literacy essentials knows that I'm moving at a brisk pace, but with multiple encounters with those words and with those rules. So everything is it's repetitive, but in a good way.
Yeah.
In a way where they learn how to do it. So just like an Olympic swimmer would, swim and swim and swim, trying to beat his best time, we are also repeating, practicing rules, practicing words to gain mastery. And so that's ultimately what we're doing. So so even the struggling little ducks in the back will start to be able to keep with the rest of the group with multiple encounters with words, with the rules happening throughout the day. And that's done through those 8 to 9 sessions that are built throughout the school day.
That's awesome. Great. Did I miss anything, Sherry? Do we forget something?
We could sit and talk about this all day. You know that I could, and you know that I would.
I just want to make sure that I didn't miss the essential elements.
It's my passion.
Okay.
I mean, without explicit literacy and grammar instruction, I can't imagine how, unless you're a student who just has this propensity for learning, and even those who do, who are quick learners, or or easy learners, or however you want to phrase it, they're the ones who I think appreciate it the most.
Yeah.
Because they kind of see it from our eyes.
Yeah.
How valuable it is that they're not just learning
the order and
they love it. They love the analysis of the words. They love looking for those rules, how to apply them.
Yeah.
It's fast. So it's not just this boring thing that we do. The kids love it. They all love it.
Yeah. And I think that's right. I don't think it's boring. I think it would be dishonest if we didn't acknowledge the fact that there's a literacy problem in America, and that stems from probably this sort of experimentation that's kind of done on children in all these other schools. You touched on Solda's story earlier, and they talk about a variety of those different things in the podcast, which is important. We don't have to go through all that now, but I think it's essential for students, for human beings, to understand the language that they speak and to be able to communicate it well, and not just orally, but in writing. And that's really how do we know about any period in history? Because they knew the language, and they didn't just talk to each other and pass it down orally, but they wrote it down in a way that we can access it ourselves now. And so I think it's just such a fundamentally important part of who we are as human beings, to be able to not just to speak clearly, but to write clearly. And it helps us all to be more thoughtful, to be able to access some of these great texts and the great ideas, and to communicate about them. So there's nothing boring about it. Yeah, it's a fundamental element of being a intelligent human being, I think. So, anyway. I'm going to ask you one last question. It's not about literacy, though. So you've been here you've been here since the beginning. I hear this phrase a lot lately. You're a founding member. Okay. It's an important phrase I've been hearing a lot of lately. As one of those people, we'll wrap it up. Just tell me, what is it that you love about this building, working here, the culture of the school, whatever it is, your favorite thing about being a part of this?
Well, we are family here. I think that's probably the most important thing of all, that we all, not just the faculty caring about each other, but when I have teachers come to me for, coaching advice, or I see teachers in the classroom, they really care about the success of their students. Yeah. And they come to me asking for, what can we do? And I'm always looking for answers for them. And we celebrate the good things. We celebrate we finished our literacy essentials manual this week, we got over a 95%, class average on our spelling quiz. I mean, we celebrate the good, and we're always looking to solve the issues, because there's always going to be something that we need to work on, but we're always looking for ways to work on it. Yeah. And so I just think that the communication between the staff and administration is excellent, and parents too. Like the last day of school, it was nice to walk around and say hello to some people that I've gotten to know over these years. Yeah. And so it's just, we're family. Yeah, that's great. First and foremost, all working toward the same goal of training the minds and improving the hearts of these kids.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you. Thank you for being on the Fire of Liberty today. It was a joy to have you and to discuss literacy with you. That's all for today. We look forward to seeing you again in the next episode. Until then, sapientia operibus vindicata.